I've always thought I was pretty bad at getting things done efficiently since I was a kid. It's a common belief that the middle child among three siblings tends to be the most adept, but I, as the second son, was the least efficient of all my siblings and always treated as the slow one. I wish I could have been more adroit and approachable like my elder brother and younger brother, but communication has never been my strong suit, and it made life challenging for me in high school, college, and even in the working world. Though I try my best, I get scolded daily by my boss, John, and can't seem to connect with my colleagues or subordinates. But as long as I don't lose hope, things might change someday. Holding on to that hope, all I could do was to live my life earnestly. Yet, contrary to my hopes, my days seemed to be heading in a worse direction. One day, when I arrived at work, I saw a notice posted about staff transfers, and to my surprise, my name was listed. I hadn't requested a transfer, nor had I heard any discussion about the possibility. Moreover, the new location was a remote rural town, hours away by plane, with which I had no connection. I couldn't just accept it, so I went to ask John for an explanation. What I heard next was shocking. Last month, there was a major mistake in my department. I wasn't involved in that project, so I had nothing to do with it. Or so I thought, but it seems the blame was being placed on me. The person who actually started the mistake was John, so I didn't have the courage to confront him directly, and since I had no colleagues who trusted me enough to believe in me, I reluctantly accepted the transfer. Well, I didn't have a strong reason to stay in that place anyway. So, I moved to a town I had never been to before. The buildings were significantly smaller than in the city where I had worked, and my job mostly consisted of menial tasks. My salary was reduced, and it became hard to feel hopeful about the future. But then, I met someone. "You again, with that gloomy face. Is that any way to enjoy life?" While working at my desk, I would often hear this loud voice from behind. Turning around, I would see the cleaning lady, who came in every day, Mary. She talked to me like this every day. Honestly, I had never met anyone who spoke as loudly as she did in my entire life. Then I said, "Well, it's not fun." "What? Can't hear you. You need to speak up if you want people to understand how you feel." I had never been interrupted like this either. "Have you always been like this your whole life?" Nor had I met someone who was so blunt. So, to me, Mary was truly an extraordinary and, well, quite an eccentric person. Initially, I was quite uncomfortable around her. But after working there for some time, I realized that Mary was the same with everyone, speaking in this manner. And everyone seemed to enjoy talking with her, always smiling. It was clear that she was well liked by everyone. Eventually, I found myself wondering, if I had communication skills like Mary's, would my life have been different? "Mary, I went on a trip this weekend and bought some souvenirs. Feel free to have some." A female colleague said this to Mary when she came in to clean. "Oh, really? That's so kind of you." Mary opened the box of sweets at an astonishing speed and popped one into her mouth. Then suddenly, "Hey you, come here." Mary unexpectedly gestured for me to come over. As I stood there, bewildered, she urged me, "Come on, hurry up." So I reluctantly walked over to where Mary and the others were. She said to me, "She brought these. They're really delicious. You should have some too, here." But I didn't know what to do, as I wasn't close to any colleagues, let alone this one. I felt uneasy because these sweets were bought for Mary, and I wasn't sure if I should accept them. No, I really feel bad about it. When I responded, Mary, in her loud voice, said, "What's there to feel bad about? Sharing good things makes everyone happy, right, right." She looked to the female colleague for agreement. The colleague smiled warmly and said, "Of course, please feel free to have some." "Ah, thank you, then." With a somewhat light-hearted feeling, I ate the sweet. It was delicious. Actually, I don't really remember. being smiled at by a colleague and having a chat while receiving a souvenir. I never imagined such a day would come. It felt like a dream. It's really delicious, thank you so much. I felt an overwhelming sense of joy from deep within. From then on, I occasionally chatted with that colleague, and thanks to Mary's communication skills, I started talking more with other colleagues too. After half a year, I was able to have non-work-related conversations even without Mary's help. "Ethan, we're planning a barbecue this weekend, are you free?" When I was asked that, I worried if the question was really meant for me. But it was definitely directed at me. I don't have any plans. I'm glad. I'll send you the details of the place and time later. Having such a normal conversation was a big change for me. This would have been absolutely unthinkable back when I was working in the city. Maybe it's not about the place. If Mary hadn't been here in this rural town, my environment probably wouldn't have changed. That's what I believe. So, I found myself immensely grateful to Mary, more than I could ever express. "Did you have a barbecue this weekend?" The following Monday, Mary asked me this. "Yes, it was amazing. Being outside in nature, everything tastes so good. I wish you could have joined us," I said, and Mary laughed heartily. "Me, an old lady, there, I'd just be in the way. If you guys had fun, that's all that matters to me." I'm sure no one would have thought she was in the way. Thinking this, I felt that her response was so typical of Mary, and it warmed my heart. "Are you heading out already?" Mary asked me this as I stood in the company lobby with my bag during the day. "Yes, I need to use up my paid leave, so I'm taking a half day off today." When I replied, "How about joining me for lunch now?" Mary suggested. So, we stopped by a nearby convenience store, grabbed some simple sandwiches, and went to the park next to the office. "Are you on break, Mary?" "Yes, I am." We sat by the river flowing through the park, chatting about trivial things. During our conversation, Mary said, "Your face has changed quite a bit, hasn't it?" I was a bit surprised. Of course, I hadn't had any cosmetic surgery, and I hadn't gained or lost any weight. I couldn't think of any reason why my face would have changed. Noticing my puzzled look, Mary laughed and said, "It's not your face itself, silly. It's about your expression." "Oh, I see." Even so, I never really noticed my own expressions, so it was still something I couldn't understand. But after listening to what Mary continued to say, I started to understand. "When you first came here, your eyes lacked light. They were so dark, it seemed like you couldn't even see what was right in front of you." I hadn't been conscious of my expressions at all. But when she said that, I realized it was true. Indeed, there was everyday life right in front of me, and I was living here as myself, but it felt like I wasn't seeing any of it. I was just moving my feet, not seeing anything. That's how it felt. But all that changed, undoubtedly, after I met Mary. "It's all thanks to you, Mary. I was always clumsy and introverted, shy around people, and couldn't bond with my colleagues. But you created the opportunity for me to get along with everyone. I truly appreciate it." Yes, I had been meaning to thank Mary someday. But her response was unexpected. "That's not it, Ethan. I didn't do anything. It's all something you brought about. You were able to change because you wanted to change. If you're going to thank someone, thank yourself, not me." Mary, I might have always wanted to change deep down. But somewhere inside, I had resigned myself to the belief that I could never change. Indeed, it was Mary who made me realize this. "Thank you." "There you go, thanking again." Mary said this and laughed heartily, as she always did. "I really am glad I came here. I can truly feel that now." Then, one day, about a year had passed since I was transferred to this rural town. Out of the blue, Mr. Wilson, the president, decided to come for an inspection, even though there had been no prior communication. Everyone worked seriously as usual, but the tension was undeniable with Mr. Wilson's visit. Everyone was restless from the morning of that day. Of course, I was too. And when the appointed time came and Mr. Wilson entered the office, I was a bit shocked. Next to Mr. Wilson was John, from my old department, the one who had blamed me for his mistake. From the atmosphere, it was clear he had been promoted after that incident. Of course, I understand that there must be reasons for a promotion, and that he had the necessary abilities, but it still felt hard to accept. I was definitely feeling bitter. Mr. Wilson and his group toured the office for a while, had discussions among the higher-ups, and I, just a regular employee, watched from a distance. Well, I didn't want to get involved, and to be honest, I didn't want to remember those times. While I was focusing on my work at my desk, thinking this, I sensed someone behind me. When I turned around, there was John. "Hey, long time no see." He greeted me with a face that showed no malice. "It's been a while," I thought to myself, how he could talk to me so nonchalantly. But I didn't have the courage to retort. "I really am grateful for having the opportunity to come here, so there's nothing more to say about it now. I just want to forget it all." That was my honest wish. Yet, "You've been bravely working hard even after being transferred to this rundown branch. How admirable," he said. He said such things. Although it was a brief remark, it was packed with all sorts of sarcasm and spite. It was a humiliating statement, to the point where I couldn't even muster a forced smile. And yet, standing in front of John, I felt pathetic for not being able to respond. "Come on, say something back to him." That's what I was chanting inside my head when, "What, you have such a bad personality." That familiar voice came from behind. When John and I turned around in surprise, there was Mary. Huh. John didn't like her words and reacted badly. But Mary, unfazed as always, said, "You only have that to say to an employee who's working hard even in the countryside. I don't care how high and mighty you are. It's impressive you got promoted with that attitude." I was astounded. Of course, I was incredibly happy that Mary was standing up for me. But in my mind, a superior was someone who should never be opposed, a firmly established belief. So, it was shocking to me that someone could speak up so clearly within seconds of meeting. "Are you trying to get yourself fired, lady?" John tried to threaten her, it seemed. "I don't mind. Do you even have that authority?" Her attitude didn't change at all. The sudden confrontation silenced the office, and Mr. Wilson, who had been a bit distant, sensed the atmosphere and came back. Seeing him, John suddenly changed his tone. "Mr. Wilson, this branch is not functioning properly. They show a bad attitude towards me and lack motivation in their work. To say such things not only about me but about unrelated employees as well. No, that's not true. Everyone here is really serious about their work." The only thing that came out of my mouth was such a pathetic response. If only I could respond clearly like Mary. Otherwise, he might fabricate lies like before and cause trouble for everyone in this company. Even thinking this, I felt my body trembling pathetically. Look, unproductive and creating trouble whenever it suits him. That's why you were transferred, and you haven't changed at all, John said. I never tried to create trouble. How much I hated not being able to express my feelings, and how I've lived with that. Yet, even now, I couldn't find the words to respond properly. Then, "Are you blind or what?" When I heard Mary's assertive voice, to my surprise, she was standing right in front of Mr. Wilson. She confronted him, saying something like this. She said, "Ignoring such a sincere young man, tolerating and even promoting someone who bullies subordinates, don't you have any judgment? It's disgusting to watch. Can't you work more pleasantly?" The office fell silent. Mr. Wilson was taken aback by Mary's forceful words, and John seemed to have no comeback. Mary's forceful words were incredibly refreshing and felt good to hear. But more than that, the fact that someone was willing to go this far for me was overwhelmingly heartwarming. In the quiet office, a taxi arrived, and in the awkward silence, Mr. Wilson and his group left. "I'm sorry if I caused any trouble for everyone because of me," I apologized. When I did, all my colleagues laughed and said, "The real nuisance was that arrogant John. Honestly, he made us all angry. We should be thanking Ethan and Mary instead." They even complimented me. I felt truly fortunate to have come to such a warm workplace. And then I said, "Mary, I really can't thank you enough." That was all I could do for Mary. But as usual, she brushed it off, saying, "I just couldn't stand it, so I stepped in. You don't need to thank me." After that incident, our branch didn't get shut down, nor did anyone get fired. On the other hand, it seemed John had a hard time after returning. I heard through the grapevine that Mr. Wilson was furious for being made to look foolish and ordered an internal investigation into John's department. Numerous complaints of power harassment surfaced, and apparently, John got fired. When Mary heard about it, she laughed heartily as usual. "Serves him right. You see, the universe is always watching. It's what they call poetic justice." Since then, I've been living my usual life in this rural town. It's the complete opposite of my life in the city, but it seems to suit me. I find immense joy in living this everyday life. Since Mary gets mad if I try to thank her, lately I've been showing my gratitude for actions, like buying her gifts or inviting her to lunch. But I always think to myself, "Mary, thank you for teaching me the importance of finding happiness in the unchanging days. Truly, thank you." It's been a while, hasn't it? How are you? Seems like you're still the same old loser. Oh, you're still breathing. Looking at you again. You really have a dull face. I can't believe I was married to someone like you. That's definitely a dark chapter in my life. Amanda, who abandoned my brother Michael and me, hasn't changed at all even though it's been 5 years since we last met. Actually, however, a single sentence uttered by our father quickly drained the color from both their faces. "My name is William. This year, I turned 40. Since graduating from university, I've been working at a general corporation. Lately, I've been handling responsible trading tasks and training newcomers, thinking about what more I can do for the company, and living fulfilling days. However, it would be inaccurate to say that my life has always been smooth sailing. From childhood until I left home, I was constantly compared to my brilliant brother Michael and led a troubled life. I think my own abilities are average from an outsider's perspective. I wasn't exceptional in academics or sports but managed to perform at an average level. However, since I was young, relatives always said, "Michael is better than you at." This was because my brother, Michael, had the ultimate package: good looks and brains. I've lost count of how many times I've heard, "Your brother is really amazing at everything," compared to him, the younger one. Being compared to my talented brother was a daily occurrence for me. Initially, I tried desperately to catch up to him, but gradually, my spirit eroded. As a child, I couldn't say that my brother and I were close. We hardly have any significant memories together. He always seemed pleased with himself, reveling in being superior while I was inferior. Come on, hand over that tour already. Since we were little, I can't remember how many times he took things from me. "Mom, Michael is taking my toys again." Even when I sought help from my parents, everyone seemed to side with Michael. He had always been good at ingratiating himself with those above him. That's probably why they never realized he was bullying me behind their backs. If you're so upset, why don't you try taking it back with your own strength? He would say this while looking down and laughing at me. Despite being favored most of the time, Michael never seemed to have a generous spirit. The only one who ever stood by me was our grandmother, with whom we lived. Whenever I received harsh words from my parents or was bullied by Michael, I would always go to my grandmother's room for comfort. "William is a kind child. Everything will be all right." My grandmother would always comfort me as I cried, often giving me sugar candies. The taste of my tears mixed with the sweetness of the candies in my mouth. "Grandma, these sugar candies are delicious." "That's good to hear. Come on, smile for me. Your smile suits you best, William." I always loved my grandmother's smile. As I grew older, I stopped crying, but I still spent a lot of time in my grandmother's room. Meanwhile, Michael smoothly passed his university entrance exams. He attended a prestigious high school, went to cram schools, and his mock exam results were always excellent. Eventually, he got into a top private university, as expected. The first time Michael faced a setback was 2 years later when I got into a national university with a higher entrance standard than his. I have given up on many things about myself, but then I saw how thrilled our parents were with Michael's success at his first choice university. It made me wonder how they would feel if their son, who they had no expectations for, managed to get into a university above his abilities. I thought this might be a turning point in my life. As expected, Michael was furious and lashed out at me. "How dare you outshine me? It's insolent for someone like you." By then, our parents had started to notice Michael's bad temper and began treating me more equally. This probably irked him even more. "Hey, give up your university admission. It's unacceptable for you to surpass me." Despite being told that, I didn't care and proceeded to enroll in college. There, I met my ex-wife, Amanda. Amanda was a classmate of mine, and we were close enough to join the same club. She was a very sociable person, liked by everyone. At first, I was nervous being alone with Amanda, but she was charming and interesting to talk to. The time we spent together became enjoyable, and our relationship deepened. Then, Amanda began to aggressively pursue me, sending daily messages and occasionally calling. She would invite me out for meals almost every week. I thought I was dreaming. One day, on the way home, Amanda confessed her feelings to me. By that time, I think I had completely fallen for her. I vowed to cherish Amanda, who had always been by my side. When our relationship reached the 3-month mark, I invited her to my family home. It was her first visit, but she seemed to get along well with my brother and parents. My parents, in particular, took a liking to her since she was good at winning people over. After dropping Amanda off at her house and returning home, I could clearly see that Michael was in a bad mood. It turned out he was upset that I had a girlfriend while he didn't. "Well, a mediocre guy like you would end up with someone like her, right?" Though his words ridiculed Amanda and boiled my blood, I knew arguing would only add fuel to the fire. I held back and just listened. Gradually, he started bragging about himself, mentioning that he was being pursued by the daughter of Mr. Smith, the president of the company he worked for. I thought he should just date her instead of complaining to me, but it seemed they weren't quite there yet. Taking advantage of my listening, he began to say things like, "It's ridiculous that a guy like you has a girlfriend and I don't." Michael's selfish words made me say, "That's just the way it is," but I could barely bear it. Since then, Michael often made snide remarks to me, which became quite tiresome. When I mentioned this to Amanda at our club, she became worried and inquired in detail about my brother's behavior. After some time, I happily married Amanda. Thanks to my diligent studies in college, I landed a job at a top company, and being a saver from a young age, I had a decent amount of savings. I thought I could now live happily ever after with Amanda. However, reality was not so sweet. Since we didn't cohabit before marriage, living together was a whole new experience for us, and we were still figuring things out. Meanwhile, one thing caught my attention. Amanda started coming home late. She would come home late at night on weekdays, and on weekends, she often went out for various reasons. During long weekends, she frequently went on trips with friends. Is your job really that busy that you come home late every day? Well, yes. I'm still a newcomer, so I can't leave before my seniors. Plus, I'm often invited to drinking parties. It can't be helped, right? Despite saying this, Amanda's late returns did not change. In fact, they seemed to worsen. She often returned home in the early hours of the morning. Additionally, when she was at home, she was constantly communicating with someone on her phone. She would laugh, show surprise, or blush while looking at her cell phone. Seeing Amanda always carrying her cell phone around, I started to feel a sense of unease. I wondered if it was normal to go to drinking parties so frequently. When I asked about the people she was drinking with, she never gave a clear answer, leading me to inevitably suspect something was amiss. Amanda, who are you going out drinking with every week? Are these really just work-related drinking parties? Why do you care so much? I thought we agreed not to be controlling. I really can't stand it when someone questions me like this. Her angry response surprised me, but since I still loved her, I pretended not to mind and let it go. As the days went on, I found myself wanting to see my grandmother and decided to visit my family home. I'm going to visit my parents for a bit. I mentioned this to Amanda, who was doing her makeup in the living room. She quickly turned around, surprised. What? Why? I want to come too. I felt a bit uneasy about Amanda's reaction. We rarely spent holidays together. I've asked her out on dates several times, but she's always turned me down. Moreover, is it normal to be so eager to visit someone's family home like this? Feeling suspicious, I asked Amanda. We're going to visit Grandma, right? I don't mind you coming along, but didn't you have something to do today? Oh, I want to meet your grandma too. My plans weren't that important, so it's fine. I'll get ready. Just wait a bit. Despite my suspicions about Amanda's unusually cheerful demeanor, I was looking forward to catching up with my grandmother, whom I hadn't seen in a while. Upon arriving at the family home, instead of heading to my grandmother's room with me, Amanda sat down in the living room and started using her phone. Aren't you coming to Grandma's room with me? Not now. You go talk to Grandma, she replied. After being told so, I headed to my grandmother's room. After chatting for a while, I became curious about Amanda's behavior and decided to return to the living room. There, I was shocked to see my brother and Amanda embracing each other. To my utter disbelief, there was my brother, embracing Amanda. My mind went completely blank, and I was so stunned that I couldn't even cry. Michael, Amanda, what's going on here? I demanded furiously. Initially, they both had a look of regret on their faces, but this soon changed to an expression of annoyance, and they became defiant. It's okay, isn't it? We were planning to tell you eventually. Let's just say it today. Amanda said this as she wrapped her arm around Michael's. Tell me, what do you mean? I'm dating Michael, so I can't be with you anymore, she confessed. That's right. Of course, she'd choose me over you, Michael said with a smirk. Seeing his smug face, I felt a surge of anger building up inside me. Amanda must have been after my brother from the beginning, even today. Everything clicked. They had been mocking me all along. You said you were going on a trip with friends. Was that with Michael? Yes. At that time, we really were just friends. But thanks to meeting you, I met Michael. I am grateful for that. Watching Amanda gaze at Michael with adoration, I felt nothing but disgust. While I was working hard, Amanda must have been spending time with Michael. So, you admit to cheating. That means we'll have to get a divorce. If you liked my brother all along, why did you marry me? Shut up. I never liked you to begin with. Why should I have to explain myself? she retorted harshly. Her shocking words left me speechless, and Amanda continued her tirade. I was still unsure back then. You work for a top company, right? But when I heard Michael was starting his own company, I decided to follow him. Being a CEO's wife sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Amanda explained. As I listened to the story of how she and Michael became close, I reflected on our past encounters. Indeed, Amanda always seemed happier when she was with Michael. It all made sense now. She was always eager to hear about him. Even though she married me, she had been seeing him on the side. I couldn't even tell if the person in front of me was the same Amanda I had fallen in love with. I had always been compared to my brother and overlooked. Even our toys and games were monopolized by him. To think, the first woman who I thought recognized me was comparing me with my brother all along. Well, say something. Are you upset? It's ridiculous for you to be happier than me. That's why I decided to make Amanda mine the moment I first met her, Michael boasted. So, their relationship had been going on even when I was engaged to her. Michael is better looking, and he buys me whatever I want. Plus, he's starting a company, so obviously, he's the better choice, Amanda justified. Michael is better, a phrase I've heard countless times before. But never has it hurt this much. I bit my lip hard, holding back my emotions. Is love really about buying someone whatever they want? The two of you were laughing at me all along, weren't you? There's no need to yell. It was obvious from the start, so it can't be helped, Amanda replied dismissively. Enough, I'm going to tell our parents and your parents about this. Call them here now. Let's get Grandma involved too. We should discuss this together, I insisted. At this, the two of them started to panic. Do we really need to involve the parents? Can't we just talk this out, the three of us? Why should I have to discuss this in a one-on-two situation with Amanda and Michael? Besides, if we're talking about divorce, it's inevitable to involve the parents. If we're going to divorce, it's better to discuss it together, or should I call them? Fine, I'll call them, Amanda said reluctantly. Amanda grudgingly contacted the parents, and soon a discussion ensued involving her parents, mine, and my grandmother, who was in her room. During the discussion, Amanda's unabashed attitude made it seem as if she was thrilled to be with the person she loved, beyond the affair and the fact that it was my brother. Did she go on trips and come back bragging to me? This must be what they mean by being in La La Land. First, I explained the situation. My parents were speechless, unable to believe that their beloved son, Michael, could do such a thing. Especially my mom, who had always doted on him since we were kids, seemed deeply shocked. Surprisingly, at this point, Amanda somewhat assisted me. The person I loved was your brother, so what William said is mostly true. My destiny was with Michael, she admitted. Michael nodded in agreement. They must have decided on this defiant approach together. It was actually convenient for me, as it saved me the effort of convincing our parents. What shocked me more were the words of Amanda's mother. Let's not worry, everyone. They are still young and should be free to love who they want. We don't mind whether it's the older brother or the younger one, as long as Amanda is happy, she said. Amanda's father nodded in agreement. Taking advantage of his parents' absurd stance, Michael began to speak arrogantly. Amanda and I were destined to be together, and obviously, I am far superior to my brother. She realized that, and that's why this isn't Amanda's fault but rather my brother's inadequacy, he declared. His nonsense didn't stop there. When Amanda reciprocated my feelings, I was overjoyed. William doesn't understand the happiness of having her by his side. It's clear that I can cherish her more than he ever could, he continued. Amanda's parents were moved by his words, mistaking this affair for some kind of touching story. To my amazement, Michael continued to spin this narrative of a love story, while I stood there in shock. My parents were silent, not knowing how to react. It must have been a shock for them too. That's when my grandmother's angry voice filled the room. "Do you two have any idea what you've done?" The room fell into a hushed silence. Normally gentle and kind, my grandmother's anger was far more fearsome than my father's. No one dared to speak. "Listen, are you two really going to support these heartless people? If so, I'll leave this house with William," she declared. Spurred by these words, my parents seemed to snap back to reality, and my dad spoke with a firm tone. "Having a relationship with your own brother's wife is inexcusable. I will never accept it. If you divorce William and then marry this woman, our relationship as father and son is over." "What are you talking about, Dad? Stop joking," Michael retorted. "I'm not joking. You brought this upon yourself," my dad replied sternly. Michael was at a loss for words under our dad's harsh stance. My mom, looking straight at Michael, did not defend him. "He'll think I'm pitied for being disowned by my own dad," Michael lamented. I was astonished at his words. It's understandable he's shocked to hear that from our dad, but it's just like him to only think of himself in this situation. And then Amanda sided with Michael. "It's too much. I intended to divorce William anyway, so that's fine, but cutting ties with Michael is terrible," she complained. Both my parents and I thought it was they who were awful. Amanda's mother was nodding tearfully in agreement. Michael, responding to our dad's words, turned to our parents and declared, "So, Dad and Mom are siding with William, the son who was always inferior. I'll cut ties with you then, as long as I have Amanda. I don't need anyone else." He stormed out with Amanda, hand in hand, leaving us speechless. Amanda's parents apologized and left. Soon after, my parents apologized to me. "We're sorry for not believing you sooner. We just couldn't imagine it, and it was wrong to always compare you to Michael when you were kids," they said regretfully. My mom, tearfully, apologized to me. "You turned out to be a wise and upright person despite being born into a family with such parents and a brother like that," she said. "There's no need for you to apologize, Dad. I'm sorry for causing such a disgraceful dispute among siblings," I replied. Their apology made me feel emotional, and I started to cry. Seeing me cry, my parents also shed tears. It was one of the worst feelings I had ever experienced. My grandmother, smiling, told me, "You did well." I felt the barrier I had always sensed between my parents and me disappear, clearing the awkwardness of my heart. That was the one good thing to come out of this. I was grateful to my brother and Amanda for improving my relationship with my parents. Eventually, Amanda and I successfully divorced, but she and Michael disappeared without a trace. Neither my parents nor I cared about them anymore. When the story faded from everyone's memory, the two showed up at my parents' house. 5 years had passed since the divorce. By then, my grandmother's health had deteriorated due to rage, and she was in and out of the hospital. When I opened the door to the sound of the doorbell, there stood Michael and Amanda, hand in hand. Seeing Michael alone would have been one thing, but I was genuinely surprised to see Amanda with him. "It's been a while, hasn't it? Still a loser, I see," Michael mocked. "Oh, you're still breathing. Looking at you again. I can't believe I married such a dull person. What a dark history," Amanda sneered, and they both laughed at me. Saying that, they looked at me and laughed together. I thought about retorting, but it seemed silly to take them seriously, so I ignored them. Then they just took off their shoes and came into the house. Soon after, my dad came out and raised his voice at the two of them, who were making themselves at home in the living room. "Now, what brings you here after all this time? You're no longer my son, so just leave." Although Dad said that, Michael insisted he just wanted to make a report. "Dad, I married Amanda. I came today to tell you that. I wanted to let you know that, taking your place, Amanda and I will be happy together." Michael spoke with a dreamy look on his face. and there was Amanda with a smug expression. These two hadn't changed at all in 5 years. Dad must have been thinking the same thing, as he let out a big sigh. I see. I've told you many times, you're no longer my son. I have no intention of celebrating your marriage. Well, that's fine. I just wanted to report. Also, Dad, how's Grandma? How's her health been lately? I thought he came to ask about our grandmother, who had been hospitalized due to illness. Dad, somewhat softened by this question, replied more kindly. Grandma's the same as always. Her illness isn't getting better, but it's not worsening either. Don't worry. Not that. I mean, what about her inheritance? Grandma has a considerable amount, and I heard some of it was supposed to come to me. Could I possibly get my share now, as a gift during her lifetime? I was stunned. It turned out that the real reason for his visit wasn't the marriage announcement. That was just a side note. His main goal was Grandma's inheritance. However, I was puzzled because Michael, who started his own company at a young age, shouldn't be struggling financially. I asked him directly. You need money that badly? Well, that's... Michael started to stammer. Watching this, Dad delivered the final blow. Actually, there's no inheritance left for you guys. Grandma's inheritance has already been given away as a lifetime gift to the hard-working couple. William. What? Did you just say couple? Wait, Sarah. As my wife Sarah, whom she had called, appeared, Michael collapsed to his knees. That's because she was the daughter of the president of the company where Michael used to work. She was also the woman he had been hopelessly in love with. What do you mean? Are you really married? Oh, long time no see. Since when did I become the one who was dumped by you? The woman who smiles so brightly is now my wife. Even in front of Michael and Amanda, Sarah stands confidently and impressively. When Sarah speaks, Michael is visibly shaken. She and I were originally classmates and got along well. She was even there to support me compassionately during my messy divorce. We started dating after my divorce was finalized, but it was a month later when I realized she was the one Michael had feelings for. It became clear when we talked about Sarah's love life. I had a hunch, and it turned out to be true. At the time, Michael boasted as if he had been the one to end things, but the truth was that despite his earnest efforts, Sarah was not swayed at all. I didn't talk much about my brother, so it took me a while to notice. However, normally one would hesitate to date their brother's ex, so I was prepared to be rejected, but she cheerfully smiled and said this. William is William. It doesn't matter who your brother is. Sure, if you were arrogant like Michael, I'd dislike it, but as long as it's you, William, I want to be with you forever. Learning that Sarah, whom he had once been deeply smitten with, and I were married seemed to have dealt a significant shock to Michael. Seeing his reaction, Amanda too started to sense the unusual tension and began to panic. Then Sarah, adding insult to injury, turned to Amanda and said, Nice to meet you. Actually, Michael once pursued me, but he was so selfish, self-centered, and frankly not the sharpest tool in the shed. So I found it exhausting to be around him. Doesn't that bother you? Hearing this, Michael clenched his lips, his face a picture of indescribable bitterness. Even through his tears, Michael started talking about the inheritance again. Just give me all of Grandma's inheritance already. About that, as I was about to explain, Sarah cut me off. Actually, we have a baby on the way. It's what you'd call a shotgun wedding. We were just discussing how it's going to be expensive and challenging. Then, Grandma said, Poor William has already suffered enough because of her no-good brother. I can't let her struggle financially too. So, she decided to give us her inheritance. Originally, there was talk of writing a will for later, but since Sarah's pregnancy came to light, we needed the money right away. That's why Grandma is giving us a living inheritance. By the way, I heard those two need money urgently as well. What happened? Could it be that something's gone wrong with the company? Michael started. I feel like I've just rubbed salt into the wound. Apparently, the company went bankrupt, and they're drowning in debt. Desperate, they came to our place, eyeing Grandma's inheritance. Hearing this, my dad spoke quietly. So, it's true. What goes around, comes around. Anyway, we don't have any money to lend you to. You're just reaping what you sowed with William. That's all there is to it. How can you say that? Michael is your son too. How can you not help your own son in such trouble? Outsiders, please stay out of this. My mom interjected. I know it's hard to say this under these circumstances, but I'm actually glad you two came back. Amanda and Michael. You both made William go through so much. I talked to our family lawyer, Michael, using my connections. He said that it's only right for William to receive alimony due to the divorce. My mom's words must have sounded like a lifeline to my brother. Relieved, they listened intently to her. Amanda and Michael, because of you two, William suffered a lot. After consulting Michael, he said it's only fair that William receives alimony. Their faces drained of color as they understood what my mom meant. It's a tough situation, but that's separate. Make sure you pay William the alimony. My mom's voice rose in excitement as she spoke. Stunned by my parents' scolding, the two of them blinked rapidly, trembling and speechless. I didn't ask for alimony when I divorced Amanda. I just didn't have the heart for it and wanted to distance myself from them. But later, my mom suggested I claim alimony. After seeing my brother and his wife trying to exploit even Grandma's money, I decided to go through with it. You'll hear from Michael soon. We'll discuss the rest with him. With those final words from me, they left, shakily making their way out. Thanks to Grandma's living inheritance, Sarah and I have been able to lead a comfortable and happy life. Sarah juggles work while diligently taking care of the household and our child every day. We had a baby girl. She's a spitting image of Sarah, a beauty in the making. It feels like we have two angels at home, which makes work even more rewarding. I've just been promoted. My parents often come over to play with their granddaughter. They bring toys, which is nice, but as Sarah laughs, we're running out of space to put them. My brother and ex-wife went off the radar again after that. The only time we heard from them was when they shamelessly came begging for money. Please, I'm begging you, can you lend us some money, even just a little? Michael knelt at the doorstep, without a hint of shame. I crouched down to meet his eyes. Michael, do you really need a loan that badly? His eyes lit up, but I had to tell him the hard truth. Sorry, but I can't lend you the money. If you need money, you should find a part-time job or figure something out on your own. The same words he always used to say to me as a kid. He left, red-faced and biting his lip, a clear sign that he remembered those words too. Since then, they haven't come to our place or even visited our parents' home. They might be relying on Amanda's family now, but either way, they're probably living a tough life. As for me, I'm enjoying a happy life with Sarah and our daughter. Grandma, we're here to visit. Oh my, how adorable. Grandma, who had been feeling low, perked up with the birth of her great-granddaughter. She's a good girl, just like William. Grandma spoke to our daughter with a smile. Sarah and I watched this heartwarming scene, cherishing the happiness of being surrounded by our loved ones.